This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to Roots and All Dig In. This is a new series which came about because I've been contacted by various companies who want to come on the podcast and talk about the products they have to sell. These episodes are an opportunity for people to talk about their work, why it may appeal to gardeners, and to give advice and information about how to use their products and services. The company appearing pays me for the episode, and it works like an advertorial in a newspaper. You still have me asking practical questions that I as a gardener would like to know the answers to, and the guest has the chance to answer them and to show off their product. You don't have to listen to Dig In, you can stick to the main podcast. However, if you do listen, I'm sure you'll find them informative, and as the main podcast is free, the Dig In episodes are a way for me to financially support the work that goes into them, so you'll be supporting the main podcast by doing so. Please interact with the companies who take part in a Dig In episode on social media or send them an email, ask questions, tell them you heard about the product on Roots and All, and if you like it, buy the product. So this is the first episode in the series, and it features Rik Sellwood, who along with his business partner Chris Tanner, has launched a company called Harvst. They build greenhouses for home gardeners, which can be controlled via an app. During the episode, we talk about Harvst products, of course, but we also talk about managing crops in greenhouses and how technology can be applied in a garden setting to make our lives easier.
So hi, I'm Rik Sellwood. I'm one of two co-founding directors of Harvst. Harvst is a new company formed in 2020, and our aim is to help people to grow more. Together with my co-founding director, Chris Tanner, we formed Harvst in the midst of the pandemic. The ideas of what we do and how long go back way longer than that and have been over 18 months in development. We make smart automated mini greenhouses which help people to grow more. It's less time intensive and it makes it easier for people to grow their fruit and vegetables and their flowers. So we work out of West Wales. Everything is designed, built and manufactured and packaged out here in West Wales. And we're selling our products across the UK. We're small and we're growing really fast.
So what's your background? How did you come to this?
So it's a really interesting story. So Chris and I are neighbours. He was building, and I've been interested in what he's been building for over the last 18 months. And then during the course of the pandemic, he and I got together and started talking about how do we take what he had as some R&D projects and actually turn that into something more meaningful. And then we formed Harvst as a result of that. So it's, like I say, it started as an irrigation project for Chris in his polytunnel about 2 years ago and has developed into something significantly more meaningful. Chris is a mechanical engineer, got a master's in engineering from Sheffield University. I'm a chartered engineer, got my degree from Cranfield University. So we're both passionate engineers, but we're also very passionate gardeners.
So Chris had a polytunnel. Did you have anything to rival that?
So there was a bit of neighbourlyhood one-upmanship. I got my polytunnel installed as my lockdown project last year, so that's gone in. I'm now almost slightly regretting it because I've got to do loads of watering, but we're working on our automation kit, which is coming out shortly, which will be as a retrofit for existing greenhouses and polytunnels, which will take the smart technology out of our mini greenhouses and apply it to people who've already got something in their garden.
Yeah, I think that would be infinitely useful. And I will ask you about the irrigation for polytunnels in a minute, but who grows the biggest tomatoes out of you?
That's a story. Last year, spectacular failure, Sellwood. So Tanner went one up in the tomato stakes. I got blight on way too many tomatoes packed too tightly in my polytunnel, so he did way better than me last year. But I think I'm 1-0 up on the parsnip front. Mine are about 3/4 of a kilo. He's fairly miserable this year. Other guys that work with us, so we've got a couple of 3 people who work with us. We've got our grow along, which we put out on social media, which is tomatoes and chilies this year. That is a kind of an internal project that kind of went external. So we decided that we'd do it all together. So Katie on marketing is growing some in her flat in Neath. Chris and I are growing in the polytunnels, and the other boys are growing theirs in their greenhouses.
Well, that'll be interesting to follow. So how does the polytunnel kit work?
So in exactly the same way as the what happens in our smart mini greenhouses, our technology is based on sensing. So we have, each of our control units have an environmental sensor, so an air temperature sensor. And it also normally comes with two combined soil and moisture sensors. And those literally sit in the greenhouse or the polytunnel or one of our mini greenhouses, and they sense a level or a zone or an area in that structure. And that then determines the watering and heating action for that particular zone. So if you imagine you've got a shelf in a greenhouse, you put a sensor in the middle of the shelf in one of the tubs or the sea trays. And then the watering will come on automatically within boundaries that you set for it. So you say, if the water level gets below this level, then water automatically. If it gets above this water, don't water automatically. Otherwise, water for 10, 20, 50 seconds a day.
That's interesting. So if you had, I don't know, maybe 6 different zones, would you just buy another sensor to, for each zone? Can you kind of add bits to the kit?
So not at the moment. What we're doing is having 2 zones, because we've been looking at 2 sides of a particular growing structure, and we feel that a sensor per zone is adequate for what people need at the moment. It gives a good enough representation. There is a potential for us to develop and extend in the future, but right now that's where we're at on the and that seems to come out or be borne out by our own testing here.
So that's obviously how it works in the polytunnel kit and in the greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a bit about how the greenhouses work and which, I think you've got 2 versions, haven't you?
Yeah, so we've got the yard and the terrace. So the yard is the taller version, the terrace is the wider, lower version, just to give people a different, footprint. The yard is pretty popular, and so is the terrace, but the yard is our best-selling product because it allows you to use the space vertically. Each of the greenhouses come with automatic watering and automatic ventilation as standard. So that comes in, and it comes with the sensors that I've already talked about. And then if you choose our mains powered version, 240 mains powered version, you've got an external socket, then you can extend them by adding in our heated sea trays and heated grow tubs, and you can add on grow lights. We are confident that the greenhouses, whichever version is purchased, will extend people's growing season. And we know that the heated versions allow you to grow pretty much within reason throughout the growing year, throughout the year, rather than the growing season.
So that's interesting. So you're heating the basically the containers that things sit in or sit on, rather than heating the entire structure. Is that right?
That's correct. And we've got a bit of a sneaky preview. We've got some experimentation on some soil warming kits that allow us to actually warm the environment. But we through the course of this winter have seen, just by heating the growing structures, so the tubs and the seed trays, that the ambient temperature in our greenhouses is probably anywhere up to 5 to 6 degrees above the ambient temperature. So it keeps it well above freezing.
Oh, that's interesting. So you couldn't, I'm not going to be putting my indoor plants in there through the winter, but anything that can cope with, as you say, 5 or 6 degrees above the ambient temperature outside is fine.
Yeah, and we've grown, so just to give you an example, we've grown loads of salad, conventional salad over the winter, so rocket lettuce, watercressy type stuff, landcress. I've had, what else we had growing? Spring onions, beetroot growing quite happily in the middle of winter in some, what's been actually a quite cold winter over here in West Wales. We've had a lot of frosts. So, and they've been quite happily growing away. And the heating bill isn't massive, in case people are worried about that. We're talking about the price of a 60-watt bulb running rather than anything absolutely massive. So we're not talking about huge amounts of electricity.
And how about the lights? Do they use more electricity?
Yeah, they do, but they're reasonably low current. They're about 5 amps each, but they give out the right wavelength light, and that's the important thing here. So the grow lights are looking to create the right wavelength of light that plants enjoy. We recommend that people put them on for about 3 to 4 hours a day during the winter, and then ease that back as the spring comes in, and then start to put it back on in the autumn time. And we find that they grow plants much better.
So it needs electricity to run the heating and the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the watering, is that mains water that you connect to?
So you can connect to either. So we provide the option to either connect to a hose pipe, or we can provide a pump. And we can also provide a 25 litre tank to go with the structure. But we recognise that some people will have a water butt, and they just want to pop the pump in their existing water butt. So we can do that. All of the mini greenhouses come with a roof gutter that allows rainwater diversion into some form of structure. So whether that's a water butt or our own tanks. So we're actually harvesting rainwater as well.
Yeah. So when you were talking actually earlier, I thought because of the names yard and terrace, I had a vision of one on a balcony, and I thought, can you anchor them to the ground?
Yes. So we actually recommend that people anchor them to the ground. We do normally provide brackets for people to either fit them to a wall or a fence or or straight to the floor, so a patio or what have you. They could go onto a balcony. There's no reason why they couldn't. We have people actually position them in the open garden, and that kind of circumstances, we recommend that they buy some stakes and they stake it down to the ground. So, having our grow tubs in the bottom of them, we find actually stabilizes the structure, and it makes it very difficult for them to blow away. However, we want to be absolutely sure that people's purchase is secured, and so therefore we made that recommendation that they secure it to something.
Yeah, and can you ventilate them as well?
Yeah, so the lids auto ventilate, and both the structures have big doors on the front, so you can literally just open those doors if you want to on a much warmer day. But the roofs will ventilate anywhere between 15 degrees and 30 degrees, and that is a user set or a customer set parameter. So if you want it warmer in your greenhouse, you leave the lid to auto ventilate later at a higher temperature. If you want it to ventilate at a lower temperature, then you can set that.
I know you've got an app as well that people can use. How does that work?
Yeah, so everything I've talked about, so the auto watering, the heating and the lighting is controlled by an app, which we developed. People can go and have a look at that at app.harvst.co.uk. It's not just about controlling the control system. So this is a smart device and allows you to put those controls on, vary the heating and lighting parameters and the watering parameters. But it's also incorporated in there a grow diary. So people can select the plants that they want to grow, and then literally the growing life cycle is followed through the app. So you sow them on a particular day. It will provide you reminders on when to replant stuff, and also provide you with some helpful hints and tips on what you can do and how to do that planting, and then follows it all the way through. So I don't know anything like you, but I've had any number of grow diaries, garden diaries in my life, which don't very often get filled out, and I forget to do them. And at the end of the year, I've got nothing really helpful to make my seed order for next year. With the app, it's very easy and quick to use, and a few clicks, and you can then progress your plants through, and you can actually rate the plants that you've grown or the varieties you've grown, so that when you sit down with the seed catalogue at the end of the year, you can say, well, that one was great, I'm going to order that again. That one wasn't quite so good, I'll try something different.
I mean, that's brilliant. Like you say, I've had countless gardening diaries, and not one of them have I ever got past about 2 pages. So that's invaluable. So how big are they? How big are the 2 varieties of the greenhouse?
Okay, so the yard is 1.4 meters wide by 1.6 tall and 60 centimeters deep. So it's a pretty small footprint, but it gives you a good growing space over 3 levels to allow you to put your plants in. So you would typically put seed trays at the top a couple of levels, and then grow tubs all straight onto the soil at the bottom. The terrace is 2 meters wide by 0.75 meters tall, and again is 60 centimeters deep.
How have you kind of found them useful? What have you, apart from keeping your crops going through the winter, what other benefits do they have for you personally?
Well, I think it's better to talk about what our customers feel about them rather. I mean, we like them because you've got that controlled aspect. You can look at what the temperatures are, what the soil moisture is at any particular point, where you're sat at work or at home or away. You'll be able to keep a virtual eye on your plants. We've had many amazing stories of people doing that. They can then quickly and easily go away for a weekend, knowing that their watering will be carried out, knowing their plants will be ventilated, and not having to worry about them. And we've even got a story of a grandmother who's ordered a unit for her granddaughter in Exeter, and she lives in London, and they're going to do a joint growing project together. So people are starting to use these in really imaginative ways. What we're really hoping, and what a lot of people want from growing with us, is that they like to reduce the number of miles that their plants have had, that they can know what's going into, particularly into their food, and know it's being produced sustainably, and reducing their impact on the environment. And that's on top of all of the benefits that we know about gardening, that it has physical health benefits as well as mental health benefits.
And it's interesting you talk about sustainability. How sustainable are they? Where are the parts manufactured? And, how does the production process, how does that work?
So the production process is, we fully acknowledge that we, like all companies, have our own carbon footprint. We have signed up to the Welsh Government's Green Growth Pledge as a small company, which is a pre-accreditation certification, if you like, to say that we will take every step that we can to be as sustainable as we can. Now, the parts do require industrial processes to come to us. So we're using extruded aluminium and we're using polycarbonate as our two principal sources of materials, or the largest amount of materials, and they do have an environmental impact that comes with them. What we're going to do is, and it is in our plan, is to make sure that we have a remanufacture process, so that at the end of the life of the product, that people will be able to return them to us, and we will either recycle those parts or reuse them to make other greenhouses or other structures. So that's a commitment from us to do that in the future. Right now, we've taken all the steps we believe we can. So right now, we're doing 100% recycled and recyclable packaging, and we are minimizing the amount of packaging we're using. We don't use a significant amount of ink or paint on any of our packaging, and we're doing everything we possibly can within our own factory to be as sustainable as we possibly can.
Brilliant. One of the banes of my life with veg growing and growing things from seed, or doing cuttings or anything like that, is I get to around about this part of the year and I think, right, okay, well, my polytunnel is going to start getting full up soon and I need to move these plants out, but it's still too chilly to put them out permanently. So I find there's maybe a month of the year or a couple of weeks of the year where I'm running in and out of trays backwards and forwards, trying to get stuff hardened off during the day and then back in again at night. Is that something that you've kind of tackled, and do you think the greenhouses would be able to help you with that particular problem? I ask from a selfish point of view.
No, it's entirely good that you've asked the question. I think it's right and proper, and depends on the use of the greenhouse. And a lot of people are putting our greenhouses at very different uses. So some people are using them as a complete growing system in their own right, so that it is the only place that they grow. Other people are using them more in a conventional greenhouse fashion, in the way in which you're talking about, where you use it as a structure to grow stuff in their early stages and then put it out in the garden or somewhere else, or a pot on the patio or what have you. So if you want to use it in the mode in which you're talking about, there is no reason why, when the plants are at that right stage to start to harden them off, that you can't open the doors and open the lids and allow that hardening off process to go on whilst they're technically still inside that unit. So that makes life a lot easier for people, rather than physically taking them out of the greenhouse and putting them on the floor at the end of each day, because there is a lot of ventilation once you open the doors. And indeed, our terrace model actually has almost a completely removable front face. So you can actually take the bars off the front and take the doors out, and then you've got an open face for the day.
That is clever, actually, because with our summers being a bit warmer lately, there are times it's just too hot in a greenhouse. So that's really handy. So thinking about the irrigation, how does that work? Do you irrigate in the soil, or is it overhead irrigation?
So we've got overhead irrigation. So each of the levels in our mini greenhouses has its own run of irrigation, and we use a combination of sprayers and misters in both in the different layers to give the best coverage of watering. Now, we've chosen those sprayers and misters because we believe they are the best for their purpose. However, there's nothing to say that people can't change them for different types of those kinds of nozzles, or indeed start to put in their own droppers and micro irrigation into individual pots. That's entirely possible and configurable, so people can do that and just customize the watering system to their specific needs.
Yeah, so you don't ever have a problem with grey mould in them?
I wouldn't say we'll never have a problem with grey mould in them, because that is a growing function. It is an airborne fungal virus. I've never had it. I've been very lucky enough to have that. But what we would say is that normalising the watering, so you've got the right level of water going into the plants, you should minimise the fungal infections that go into any growing structure.
Yeah, so I'm assuming as well, because you can take it apart effectively, it's pretty easy to clean.
Yes, yeah, it should be really, really easy to clean and very quick as well. So, your standard spring clean on a greenhouse can be quite a lengthy process. This should take you kind of half the time. But because we are maximising that growing space, we don't have that central aisle around the greenhouse, and we don't have the potting bench in there as well. Actually, your growing space is significantly greater for the volume of the structure in the first place.
And what do people have the most success with in terms of crops?
I think, it's a really broad span at the moment. We're still looking at the data about what people are growing. A lot of people are using them for vegetable growing, which is great. But I think the most success at the moment is good old fashioned salad. People really like to grow that and have a succession of that growing throughout the year. Right now, a lot of people are starting to put plants in for the summer. So we've got, as I said before, we've got a lot of tomatoes and chilies going in around the place, as well as the odd tub of carrots, hopefully for maybe a late Easter or an early summer.
And so it's big enough as well, or the trays are deep enough to grow root crops?
Yeah, well, we recommend, we found that Stewart's, the garden equipment manufacturer, produce what they call a premium seed tray. Now, these are available for anybody, actually. They're out there in the garden centres, but they produce a seed tray which is 7 centimetres deep, which is more than double the standard seed tray. So if you actually grow sensibly in there and actually do it on a kind of a micro level, you can actually grow full plants in a 7 centimetre deep seed tray with a sensible root run in them. We also provide the what we call our grow tubs, which are 60 centimetres deep by 40 centimetres wide, and they hold about 40 litres of compost. So about half the size of a standard grow bag. We put those in the bases of our units, and people then grow, larger, but not massive plants in there. So you could grow some bush tomatoes in there. You can certainly grow things like spring onions and short carrots. You can grow chili plants in there. You can grow some quite decent sized vegetables in the bottom of those plants all the way through to their harvest point. Yeah.
And can I take the shelves out? I'm just thinking that my tomatoes getting tall.
If you really wanted to, you could do. There's no reason why you couldn't do that. Or you could leave the shelves in. They've got the shelves are 2 bars that allow you to rest seed trays in between them. So in fact, you don't really need to take the shelf bars out. You could actually just take out anything that was above them as the tomatoes grew up.
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
In the yard, you would certainly get something like a standard cordon tomato plant easily growing all the way up inside it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. Thinking about taking things apart and putting them back together again, is it easy to put together?
Yeah, I mean, we provide them as self-build kits. We provide self-assembly instructions. There are a number of videos on YouTube and on our website. And we estimate it takes people probably a couple of 3 hours to put together, but it should be a relatively pleasurable experience to get the frame together. We're working on that constantly to make it easier and easier for people to put together, but inevitably there is some putting together.
Yes, and similarly, the kind of electrical side of it, is that fairly straightforward?
Yeah, we'd say so. The connecting the control system to the Wi-Fi is about 6 easy steps. You turn it on, and then you associate your control system with your own home Wi-Fi system, and then it's happy. And then the rest of the plugs and connectors can only be connected in one way. So, we've got power, we've got sensors, we've got heating controls and so on. They come and you can only plug them in the appropriate sockets. So it's pretty easy for folk to be able to put that stuff together.
In your opinion, what is the benefit of using technology in the garden?
So I think, people have been using technology in the garden for an awfully long time. I did some research. We put a blog out on it recently. If you think about it, the garden lawnmower was invented in the 1830s, and people have been using that kind of technology for ever since then. We've now got robotic mowers, and it's the control and the time the reductions that you get from the automation that really help people and get them growing more. And that's what Harvst is all about. So I think that's the particular benefit, is the ability to control the growing and the ability to reduce the amount of time doing the more mundane and functional tasks that otherwise could get automated away, and allows people more time to get on with the more enjoyable tasks of planting, pricking out and enjoying their plants.
Have you got any good tips for gardeners right now? And if they're interested, where can they find you?
So my best top tip is gardening can be really quite hard work. So my top tip is to occasionally go and grab a cup of tea and a biscuit and find a nice comfortable chair and have a good look back at your garden, listen to the sights and sounds of what's going on around you and admire the work that you have created. Gardening can be that hard work, and you should look at the happiness and the sense of self-satisfaction you can get from the effort you've put into it. So that would be my top tip. If you wanted to find us, then look us up on Facebook and on Instagram at Harvst UK, or on the web at harvst.co.uk.
That's Harvst without an E, FYI. You can find links to the products in the show notes and on the Roots and All website. Do please go and check out the links. There's a really good blog on the Harvst website, and you can find out loads more about how the technology side of it works. Plus, if you order anything from the shop before the 8th of April, you'll get 15% off as a loyal Roots and All listener. Enter the code Roots and All. That's 3 separate words, and please use a capital R for Roots and a capital A for All. The A of the and is not capitalised. So that's it for the first ever dig in. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much for listening and for supporting this new series. Please let me know what you think, and don't forget, if you or someone you know has a product or service they'd like to promote on a future episode, please email podcast@rootsandall.co.uk. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.